Welcome back to Vinylology, where we rank the top 3,000 albums of all time. My name is Scout. Alan is sleeping, so I'm going to handle this video this time, so you all won't have to wait anymore. He needs help. This one is fun because we have our first and maybe only time we will have back-to-back albums by the same artist.
2020 is the 15th studio album by American rock band The Beach Boys, released in 1969 on Capitol Records. The LP was named for the album being their 20th overall album release, and much of it consists of outtakes from earlier albums. 2020 peaked at number 3 in the UK and reaching number 68 in the US. The cover photo included every member of the group except Brian Wilson, which has been suggested that this is a sign that the group was determined to forge their own new identity without their founding architect. In 1968, the Beach Boys released the album Friends, which became the group's worst-selling album to date. By early 1968, the group also had begun losing thousands of dollars in numerous bad investments and frivolous purchases. Among these were the boosting of other artists who didn't make it. One of these artists was ex-convict Charles Manson, who was then seeking a career as a singer-songwriter. Dennis Wilson befriended Manson and was interested in signing him to Brother Records. Brian and Carl Wilson proceeded to co-produce several tracks for Manson at the Beach Boys' private studio located in Brian's home. These recordings remain unheard by the public. To recuperate from the album's poor sales, the band quickly released a standalone single, Do It Again, which was a self-conscious throwback to the group's early surf songs, and it was decided that the band needed to record an album as well. Over the summer of 1968, during the recordings, Brian conducted the Beach Boys to such extreme perfectionism that both he and the band seemed to be at odds with each other. Brian also had expressed suicidal wishes at the time. Afterward, Brian was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, possibly of his own violation. Brian's issues were not disclosed to the public, and sessions continued in his absence. Once discharged, Brian was absent during most of the album's recording, requiring the rest of the band to retrieve several outtakes he had recorded years earlier. When he was there, Brian would sometimes leave if he received ominous warnings from his astrologer, and he reportedly had an oxygen mask and tank with him in order to fight the ever-present Los Angeles smog. The two oldest tracks in 2020 were sourced from the late 1966 sessions for the band's unfinished album Smile, which consisted of the songs Our Prayer and Cabanescence. Also on the album was a Carl Wilson produced rendition of the Ronettes' 1966 song I Can Hear Music, written by the great songwriting husband and wife team of Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich, who were the most successful of the New York Brill Building composers. The B-side to that song is a Dennis Wilson written and produced song All I Want to Do, which is a rocker that features the sounds of Dennis having sexual intercourse with a groupie that can be heard in the background on the fade out.
Oh yeah.
The song Never Learn Not to Love was originally written by Charles Manson under the title Cease to Exist, which was written specifically for the Beach Boys to record. In exchange for the publishing rights to Cease to Exist, Manson agreed to a sum of cash and a BSA motorcycle, which is all he wanted. Dennis produced the Beach Boys version in 1968, reworking the song's bluesy structure and altering its lyric and song title. Charles Manson's contributions to Never Learn Not to Love officially remain uncredited. In August of that year, Charles Manson and his cult of followers committed the Tate LaBianca murders and 3 months later were apprehended by police. Their former connections with Dennis and the Beach Boys became the subject of media attention. Manson was later convicted for several counts of murder and conspiracy to murder. During the trial, Manson released his debut album, which included his original arrangement of Cease to Exist. Critics generally regarded the release as having some strong material, but it was flawed mainly by a lack of direction. Some critics did agree that this was the band's best album since Pet Sounds, an improvement over the last couple of Beach Boys albums, and many thought the highlights were the couple of Smile session tunes. Also, band member Dennis Wilson was quoted as saying that 2020 was the only letdown of the Beach Boys' career that embarrassed him, and that was the first album the group made that was completely disjointed.
Alan's Copy is a 1974 compilation album with the full albums 2020 and Wild Honey, and is a Columbia Santa Maria pressing. Warner Brothers put out the band's 4 albums from 1967 to 1969 onto 2 different compilations, this being one of the 2. The only thing Alan doesn't like about these is the goofy cover art, but other than that, he feels it is okay. I'm sure it was a good value when they were originally released. Alan got this while he is away at the famous Euclid Records St. Louis record store. Alan likes the lead song Do It Again and his very modern sounding beat a lot. He also likes the song I Can Hear Music and Bluebirds Over the Mountain. After that 1, 2, 3 punch, the album starts to stagnate a little afterwards, but as a whole it is not bad. The last song, Cabin Essence, is also excellent. The soaring harmonies in the chorus is what sends the Beach Boys to the next level. It does indeed sound disjointed as an album, but it really isn't that bad and the songs are all fairly likable. That all being said, Alan gives this a 7. Please note that I take no responsibility for his scores. I would have given this a 10 with the various songs about birds and having bird sounds like I went to sleep, but whatever.
Lovers Rock is the 5th studio album by English band Sade, released in 2000 by Epic Records. The album was titled after a style of reggae music known as Lovers Rock, noted for its romantic sound and content, which frontwoman Sade Adu listened to in her youth. Lovers Rock was seen as a departure from the band's previous use of jazz elements, opting instead for a wider use of other types of music such as soul music, R&B, soft rock, folk music, dub, reggae, neo-soul, and lovers rock. Following the release of their previous album, Love Deluxe, the band took an 8-year-long hiatus, during which Adu came under media scrutiny with rumors of depression and addiction, and later went on to give birth to her first child. During this time, the other members of the band worked on side projects. Lovers Rock was recorded in only a year, and was influenced by Adu's experiences during the 8-year hiatus. The album's recording took place in London and in Spain. Unlike Sade's previous work, Lovers Rock did not contain saxophones or instrumentation, but instead had spare, deceptively simple arrangements, sometimes no more than an acoustic guitar with gently applied beats. With the songs intimately fixated on the themes of love, loss, and rejection, the album's music borrowed reverb and echo effects from dub, as well as an ease and fluidity, tougher beats and bass lines from R&B. The album opens with the lead single, By Your Side, a hymn-like song that received comparisons to A Whiter Shade of Pale and No Woman No Cry. Lyrically, Adu insists she will never leave someone in trouble. The song was released as the lead single from the album and was nominated for the 2002 Grammy Award for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, and was also placed at number 48 on VH1's list of the 100 Greatest Love Songs. King of Sorrow was released as the album's second single and explores the complexities of a faltering relationship in which Adu is torn between what she has invested and the opportunities she might be missing. The song performed poorly on the charts, only peaking at number 59 on the UK chart and failing to impact the US Billboard Hot 100. The song Flow is sonically a mixture of folky acoustic guitar, slow-paced hip-hop loops, and layered harmonies, and the song The Sweetest Gift is an acoustic number, which is dedicated to the Rainbow Trust Children's Charity, which cares for children who have a life-threatening or terminal illness. Slave Song is lyrically a social statement, calling for an awareness of Black history and the sensibility to rise above it. Upon release, Lovers Rock was met with generally positive reviews from music critics, who praised the band's musical direction. Commercially, the album reached number 18 on the UK Albums Chart and number 3 on the US Billboard 200. It has since sold 3.9 million copies in the United States by February 2010.
Alan's Copy is from Sade's This Far box set that was released in late 2020. All of Sade's albums have been remastered on 180-gram vinyl that was half-speed mastered at Abbey Road Studios by mastering guru Miles Showell, and the entire package is excellent. This is a very smooth-sounding album from beginning to end. Alan can understand that some people may find this a little boring perhaps, but it sounds nice and romantic if you are ever in the mood to Netflix and chill, whatever the hell that means.
Oh yeah.
Or if you need something to relax or even put you to sleep. That usually works for me. His favorite songs are By Your Side and especially Somebody Already Broke My Heart. His personal grade is a 7.
The King of Limbs is the 8th studio album by the English rock band Radiohead. It was self-released in 2011 as a download, followed by a physical release a month later. Following the protracted recording and more conventional instrumentation of In Rainbows, Radiohead and their longtime producer Nigel Godrich produced The King of Limbs through sampling and looping and studio experimentation. This was done purposely as singer Tom York and Godrich became interested in DJing during their time in Los Angeles, with the producer proposing a 2-week experiment whereby the band used turntables and vinyl emulation software instead of conventional instruments, which they described as a similar experience as to editing a film. The 2 weeks that were planned for the experiment turned into a 6-month period, during which the parts of the songs for the album were constructed. After the recording period, it took nearly a year and a half for the producer to put the recorded sounds into a finished product. The album's title is derived from the King of Limbs, an ancient tree in Savernake Forest, Wiltshire, near where Radiohead recorded In Rainbows. The album artwork, which is by York and longtime collaborator Stanley Donwood, depicts nature and the spirits inspired by fairy tales. With 8 tracks and 37 minutes in length, The King of Limbs is Radiohead's shortest album. Though its unconventional production and shorter length divided listeners, it was nominated in 5 categories at the 54th Annual Grammy Awards. The download version sold an estimated 400,000 copies in 2 months, and the vinyl became a bestseller in the UK, as well as the second best bestseller for the entire decade in the United Kingdom. Radiohead's management team estimated that Radiohead made more money from The King of Limbs than any other previous albums, as most sales were made through their website without a record company involved. In addition, The King of Limbs was also followed by a live video and remix album, which generally takes the experimentation even further by electronic artist collaborators such as Caribou, Fortet, and Jamie XX. Critics were deeply divided on the album, with some highly praising the work and others saying it was either disappointing, too abstract, or just lackluster. Some others also felt that The King of Limbs was less innovative than Radiohead's prior albums.
Alan's copy is a standard 33 RPM LP version, which has a dynamic range of only a 9, which is probably not that surprising since the music was all electronically produced. It also suggests that the music has been brickwalled. There was also a dual LP 45 RPM vinyl version, which only has 2 tracks per side, which assumably has a lower noise floor. Alan also has this on CD, as well as the TKOL RMX 1234567 remix album that followed. Alan's personal grade for this album is a 7.5. Even though the music is very likable, there's something a little off about it, and is definitely a drop off from their previous albums. Morning Mr. Magpie and Lotus Flower is awesome, and Alan likes some of the other songs like Feral. The shortness of the album almost makes it seem like an EP rather than an LP. That being said, if you like Radiohead, you would like this, I am sure, but it's definitely not their best. However, it's still very good.
Vital Signs is the 5th studio album by American rock band Survivor, and their first with vocalist Jimmy Jamison, released in 1984. The album was their second most successful in the United States, reaching number 16 on the Billboard album charts and being certified platinum. The album includes the singles I Can't Hold Back and First Night, as well as the top 10 hit songs High on You and The Search is Over. Survivor were formed in Chicago in 1978 and had previous massive success with its song Eye of the Tiger on the Rocky III soundtrack. The former lead singer Dave Binkler was fired from the band after suffering repercussions from a surgical operation to remove vocal fold nodules. Fun fact, Dave Binkler is also the singer that was featured on Bud Light's Real Men of Genius television commercials that were very prominent in the 2000s, with over 100 commercials recorded. New vocalist Jamison was formerly of the bands Target and Cobra. Cobra also featured former Crocus and Asia guitarist Mandy Meyer. Cobra had just broken up in 1984 before Jamison joined Survivor. Jimmy Jamison stayed with the group off and on until his death. He died on September 1, 2014 at his home in Memphis, Tennessee, 9 days after his 63rd birthday. His autopsy said that he had cardiovascular disease and narrowing of the arteries, and that he died of a brain stroke with acute methamphetamine intoxication contributing. Jimmy had a long, varied career outside of Survivor as well, who was later invited to be the lead singer for the band Deep Purple in 1989 and wrote and performed the theme song to the television show Baywatch.
Alan has an original 1984 Columbia Records Pittman press pressing, and it is in fantastic condition. This does get occasionally repressed, especially on CD, with the most recent vinyl version, a 2013 limited German green-colored vinyl. You can find this fairly easily used either in record stores or online for a reasonable price. Alan is shocked at how good this album is. Besides the 3 big hit singles, I Can't Hold Back, High on You, and The Search is Over, the rest of the songs are super catchy, like First Night and Popular Girl. It does admittedly sound dated with that early 80s slick sound, and it does sound a little too formulaic by the end. Jimmy's voice with his high harmonies is absolutely amazing. That guy was an amazing find for this band. If you like anything associated with the 80s, Alan thinks you will love this. Everyone else may not find that this is their cup of tea, but if you are open to the time period, it is highly recommended. Alan gives it a 7. I give it 6 cat treats, and it is Survivor's only entry on the list.
While One is Less Than Two is the 7th studio album by Canadian electronic music producer Joel Zimmerman, known professionally as deadmau5. The album was released in 2014 as a double album on CD formats and as a triple album on vinyl, and is his only album to be released by Astralwerks. deadmau5 got his start being an electronic musician and DJ in the early 2000s, and is currently one of the highest paid electronic music producers in the world, and is also notable for his name and the mouse-shaped helmet that he wears during his performances. The album is a notable departure from the bass-heavy, upbeat template of his previous work, instead foraying into a more experimental direction, with tones of down-tempo and ambient music. Many of the songs on the album were originally uploaded to deadmau5's SoundCloud account before they were removed from the site in early 2014, right before the album's physical and proper digital release. deadmau5 has stated that this is his first release that he would consider as a proper album and not just as a collection of singles, and it was purposely designed to be listened to as a complete experience. Its varied textures seem to mirror its creator's own emotional and experimental extremes, from the thrill of the festival spotlight to the seclusion and alienation of the studio, spread across the album's 25 tracks. The album features 7 ambient-sounding piano-only tracks, which were each named after the 7 deadly sins in Latin. One of the piano tracks, Avaricia, was released as a first single, and then 1 week later, the second single, Sia, featuring singer Colleen D'Agostino from the band The Material, was made available before the album's release. 2 other singles followed, those being Infra Turbo, Pig Heart Racer, and Phantoms Can't Hang. The album also has 2 tracks that are associated with the band 9 Inch Nails. The song Ice Age is a remix from the band How to Destroy Angels, which features Trent Reznor's wife, Mariqueen Mondig on vocals, as well as Trent and fellow musicians Atticus Ross. Also included on the album is a remix of the 9 Inch Nails song Survivalism that was originally released on their Year Zero album. The multi-track Survivalism GarageBand file was provided as a free download on 9 Inch Nails' website in order to promote the remixing by others. The album is extremely divisive among critics. It's a little hard to ascertain whether or not the most negative reviews stem from the dislike of deadmau5 as a performer or a person who has gotten himself into Twitter wars and apparently is known to be egotistical and not of the quality of the music itself. Some, like Billboard, give the album high marks and said it was ambitious, mature, and mostly well executed, whereas others were understandably confused by the new direction. Rolling Stone was especially critical of the album, stating that deadmau5 had become the world's most unnecessary 9 Inch Nails tribute act.
There are 2 vinyl pressings spread across 3 LPs, one released in 2014 and the other in 2018, and both pressings are limited and numbered. Alan had to really hunt down this album, and is unfortunately very hard and expensive to acquire now. For example, Alan's personal copy comes from a seller that was in the United Kingdom that refused to ship anything to the United States, so he had to have the seller ship it locally to a friend of a friend locally in the UK, who then mailed it to Alan's friend's cousin in Atlanta, who then gave it to Alan's friend, who then later gave it to Alan in person. Woo! The things he does for Vinylology. Through all of this, the album remained in perfect condition and Alan loves it. This was originally sold on deadmau5's website up through the year 2016 for dirt cheap, so I think that this could be repressed again at any time due to the demand. Alan's score for this album is a 7. He really likes the dynamic nature of the ambient songs morphing into the more aggressive electronic dance music, and the songs Avaricia, Infra Turbo, Pig Heart Racer, Mercedes, and Bleed stand out the most to him. Alan Alan thinks the album is like a mashup between Giorgio Moroder with the up-tempo songs and Nine Inch Nails with the more ambient material, and he finds the entire album challenging and fun to dive into. However, it can feel a little bloated with the over 2 hours of music, and you can't help but wonder if some of the excess was trimmed, if it would have helped overall. Also, he thinks the remix of Survivalism was unnecessary and illogically placed in the album, but he does like the remix of Ice Age. Another interesting observation is that the two discs feel fairly different from each other. Anyway, if you like electronic music and aren't already opinionated about deadmau5, give this a try.
Rickie Lee Jones is the debut studio album by American singer-songwriter Rickie Lee Jones, released in early 1979 by Warner Brothers Records. Jones had begun playing live in the Los Angeles area at the age of 21, and after meeting singer-songwriter Alfred Johnson, the pair began writing and performing live together, most notably at the A La Carte Club. Two of their collaborations, Weasel and the White Boys Cool and Company, would later be recorded for the album. She also sang jazz standards in her live sets. Jones's performances around Los Angeles aroused interest from other local songwriters as well as local record company executives. At a label showcase, Jones performed originals, including the song Chuck E's in Love. This showcase performance, plus a demo containing 4 of the album tracks, led to a record deal with Warner Brothers. Recording sessions, which began in September 1978, yielded 11 songs for inclusion on the album. 2 of the songs, On Saturday Afternoons in 1963 and After Hours, were recorded live right before Christmas in 1978. Upon release, the album received mostly favorable reviews and was supported by 2 singles. Lead single Chuck E's in Love peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song's inspiration was about her friend Chuck E. Weiss, a vocalist and poet who just recently died in July 2021. Jones and her fellow lover and songwriter Tom Waits spent a lot of time hanging out with their friend Weiss at the seedy Tropicana Motel in Los Angeles. Eventually, Weiss, affectionately referred to as Chuck E., disappeared. Later, Weiss called the apartment where Jones and Waits lived. When Waits took the call, Weiss explained that he was in Denver and that he had moved there because he had fallen in love with a girl there. When Waits hung up the phone, he announced to Jones, "Chuck E's in love." Jones liked the sound of the sentence and wrote a song around it. Even though the song's lyrics state that Chuck E's in love with the little girl singing the song, the twist ending is fictional. Jones was never the girl with whom Chuck E. was in love with. Fun fact, Chuck E. Weiss later appeared on 2 episodes of the television show Married with Children as a homeless man and as a record store owner in an episode of Gilmore Girls. The album was further promoted by a performance on Saturday Night Live in April 1979, where she performed Chuck E's in Love in Coolsville. A second single, Youngblood, cracked the U.S. Top 40 in late 1979 when Jones went on an international tour. The album eventually sold over 2 million copies in the United States. The album cover photography and design was by professional photographer and filmmaker Norman Seeff, who became the creative director of United Artists Records and whose photographic sessions in LA's Sunset Strip became legendary. He had taken many famous photographs from musical artists such as Kiss, James Taylor, Miles Davis, Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, and many others.
Alan's final copy is a 1979 Capitol Records Los Angeles pressing that he acquired from buying a crate of albums locally in Washington, D.C., which has a very nice dynamic range score. This has been repressed numerous times over the years, and in 2013, Mobile Fidelity did 2 different limited edition and number releases mastered from the original tapes. One of these is the traditional 33 RPM record. The other is 2 LPs playable on 45 RPM. Both versions are very expensive, unfortunately. There's also a 2008 pressing mastered by Kevin Gray, which supposedly sounds amazing. Even after all these years, this album is very nice and almost sophisticated. It definitely has a beatnik vibe to it, which is surprising for an album that was mostly played in the late 70s and early 80s. The fantastic lyrics remind Alan of early Bruce Springsteen, which mostly give feelings of loneliness and melancholy. The big hit Chuck E's in Love is of course great, but Alan was pleasantly surprised at how pleasing the rest of the album is. He really likes the beautiful tenderness in On Saturday Afternoons in 1963 and the emotional storytelling in The Last Chance Texaco in Coolsville. Not every song is a complete winner, but the musicians used, many of whom have jazz and blues backgrounds, are top-notch. Alan would like to especially call out bassist Red Callender, who was almost 60 at the time of the recording, That guy was awesome. You can also imagine that this album is very meaningful to many women, and that is exceptionally done and comes across as very personable and seems to have a positive feminine message. I'm a female cat, so I can attest that Alan is onto something there. One can't help but wonder if all of the colorful characters portrayed in the songs were real or not, but I bet they were. That all being said, Alan and I both easily give this a 7.
Believe is the second studio album by American heavy metal band Disturbed, released in 2002 via Reprise Records. The album focuses heavily on religious and spiritual themes inspired by recent tragedies experienced by the band and by recent political events such as the September 11, 2001 attacks. With greater emphasis on melodic dynamics, it also demonstrates a broadening in the band's musical range compared to the 2000 debut The Sickness. Believe was the last album to feature original bassist Steve Fuzz K-Mac before he was fired from the band in 2003 due to personality differences and was replaced by John Mower. Believe debuted at number 1 on the US Billboard 200, making it Disturbed's first number 1 album. It was eventually certified double platinum in the United States. The album also debuted at number 2 on the Canadian Albums Chart. 3 singles were released from the album, the songs Prayer, Remember, and Liberate. In the summer of 2001, vocalist David Draymond's grandfather, an Orthodox Jew, died in Israel. At a young age, Draymond was beloved by his grandfather. However, when Draymond became a heavy metal musician, his elder cut off their communication. It was not until the grandfather fell ill that he wished to see his grandson. But by the time word got to Draymond, who was on Ozfest, his grandfather only had hours to live. The feelings of loss and regret are portrayed on the album. In an MTV interview, Draymond elaborated how the reevaluating of his own Jewish heritage and compromises of life as a musician affected his writing. He was proud of the album but also expressed concern over how fans would react to the vulnerability and vast expression of emotions showcased on the album. During that same time, Draymond had undergone surgery to remove a damaged valve that was causing acid to spill on his vocal cords. The successful surgery not only repaired Draymond's voice but also allegedly broadened his vocal range. The band entered the recording studio in March 2002 to begin recording with producer Johnny Kaye, the man behind their debut album. Believe had the band shift away from the waning nu metal scene and places more emphasis on lead guitar and melodic complexity. The musical progression would follow through on future Disturbed albums where guitar solos would become more commonplace. While their former album focused solely on heavy compositions, Disturbed sophomore effort varies more greatly in its range of heaviness and melody, closing with a somber acoustic ballad entitled Darkness. Draymond also wished to demonstrate a greater vocal dimension than the intense style he was previously associated with. Besides the overt religious and spiritual themes, the album deals with various other topics as well. Remember delves into the cutthroat nature of the music industry as well as Draymond's resistance to indulgent partying. Awaken deals with America's never-ending obsession with uninspired pop music. The tracks Bound and Intoxication focus on Draymond's inability to have a meaningful romantic relationship. In keeping with the lyrical themes, the album cover features symbols of major religions, including the Jewish Star of David, the Islamic Crescent, the Wiccan Pentacle, and the Christian Cross, all mashed together. Believe boasted 3 singles which gained substantial radio and video airplay. The lead single Prayer featured a video with apocalyptic imagery of a city being destroyed. This led some outlets to refuse to play the video on the grounds that it conjures similarities to the September 11th attacks. After initially considering to edit the video, Disturbed ultimately chose not to. Follow-up singles Remember and Liberate also charted well and gained significant rotation on radio and television. The title track Believe, although not a single, would also find its way to radio airwaves. 2 of the songs also appeared in video games, with Liberate on the soundtrack for Tony Hawk's Underground 2 and Intoxication on the soundtrack for NFL Game Day 2004. Believe was generally critically favorable, with most noticing the efforts to expand their sound. Others appreciated a removal of the rap metal flourishes from their debut effort for more political topics, but some noted that the album was never very inspirational and was just merely decent. However, one big recognition came from the magazine Rock Hard, which placed the album at number 429 in their book of the 500 greatest rock and metal albums of all time.
Alan has a 2015 European pressing, and it sounds decent with no complaints. The one thing about this album is almost all the vinyl copies that he be found were picture discs. It is a fairly common album to find inexpensively, but they were always a picture disc. If you happen to not know, you want to avoid picture discs in general for vinyl collecting because they almost have surface noise that comes from the image being pressed onto the vinyl. So Alan eventually just had to order this online. Not a big deal, just don't expect to find this conventional vinyl pressing in record stores. Alan's personal score is a 6.5. There's nothing really wrong with this album. It is very good metal. He just doesn't think it's overly special either. The songs kind of drift from one to the other, and before you know it is over. Nothing really stands out, but to Alan the best songs are Prayer, Believe, and the ballad Darkness. The song Intoxication returns the band to their new metal roots, which has made them initially famous. I wonder when we'll see Disturbed on this list again.
Whoa, cool, deja vu. The Sickness is the debut studio album by American heavy metal band Disturbed. It was released in the year 2000 by Giant and Reprise Records 2 years before the last list entry. The album peaked at number 29 on the US Billboard 200 and spent a total of 103 weeks on the chart. It was Disturbed's only album to not hit number 1 on the US Billboard 200 until their 7th album, Evolution. The album was certified 5 times platinum for shipments of over 5 million copies in the US, making it the band's most successful album. Even though this is the band's first album and it was released in 2000, the band actually formed 6 years earlier in 1994 under various other band names, before finally calling themselves Disturbed starting in 1996, which the band said symbolized everything that they were feeling at the time. The band's influences were Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Metallica, Pantera, Iron Maiden, Queensryche, Soundgarden, and Faith No More. When the album was finally released, it became an instant smash and the band was invited to support Marilyn Manson. The album received positive reviews upon release. In 2013, Loudwire magazine featured The Sickness in their top 25 debut hard rock albums list. And in 2020, it was also named one of the 20 best metal albums of the 2000s by Metal Hammer magazine. Several of the songs were also featured in movie soundtracks. Voices appeared in one of the trailers for the horror film Jeepers Creepers. The game appeared in Dragon Ball Z, Cooler's Revenge, and both Stupefy and Fear appeared in Dragon Ball Z, Lord Slug. The song Down with the Sickness appeared in several films and video games, including The One, Queen of the Damned, the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead, the South Park episode with Apologies of Jesse Jackson, Rock Band 2, Guitar Hero 5, Guitar Hero Live, WWE 2K18, and other media. Professional wrestler Chris Cash Bauman also used Down with the Sickness as his theme song from 2001 to 2005 in Combat Zone Wrestling until his death in an automobile accident.
Alan's final copy is a 2015 repressing, which is okay, but the dynamic range score is a little lacking but not surprising. There also was a 2010 green translucent 10th anniversary pressing on 2 LPs with some bonus tracks and a CD if you can find it, and also some 2020 repressings for the 20th anniversary on different colored vinyl. Sound-wise, I think they are all sourced from the same digital files, so it's probably not worth overpaying unless you just want something that looks cool. Alan's personal grade is a 7. The best songs, in Alan's opinions, is Voices, The Game, and of course the metal classic Down with the Sickness. Second side is nowhere near as good as the first, and the cover of Tears for Fears Shout, which they call Shout 2000, seems a little irrelevant and contrived to create publicity. Much of the lyrics are kind of pedestrian. Alan wants to apologize now for any Disturbed fans in the house, since this is their final showing on the list. But 2 isn't bad. It's just weird that their 2 included albums were back to back. Alan will get anyone offended a piece of cake, or he will drop a plate in their honor.
Conspiracy is a 1983 studio album by the Greg Kim Band and features the hit single Jeopardy. The album marks the group's first lineup change since 1975, with Greg Douglas taking over as lead guitar player after the departure of Dave Carpenter. The band's musical style and genres comprise rock, pop rock, and power pop. The Greg Kim Band is an American band that was started by frontman Greg Kihn and bassist Steve Wright. Greg Kihn began his career as a singer-songwriter in his hometown of Baltimore, Maryland. He started writing songs and playing coffee houses while still in high school in the Baltimore area. When he was 17, his mother submitted a tape of one of his original songs to the talent contest of local top 40 radio station WCAO, in which he took first prize and won a typewriter, a stack of records, and a Vox electric guitar. He moved to San Francisco in 1975 1972 and worked various odd jobs, including working behind the counter at a Berkeley record store with future bandmate and Earthquake keyboardist Gary Phillips. Kim was eventually signed to Berkeley Records. In 1976, after his debut on the compilation album Berkeley Chartbusters Volume 1, Kim recorded his first album with his own band, now named the Greg Kim Band, consisting of Robbie Dunbar on guitar and Larry Lynch on drums. Throughout the 1970s, Kim released an album each year and became better known during promotional touring, becoming Berkeley's biggest seller. In 1981, Kim earned his first top 20 single, the breakup song They Don't Write 'Em, from the Rock Ken Roll album. Ken continued in a more commercial vein throughout the 1980s with a series of pun-titled albums. Conspiracy was released in 1983 and contained his most successful single Jeopardy, rising to number 2 right behind Michael Jackson's Beat It, and also hitting number 1 on the dance charts for 2 weeks a month earlier. The single also reached number 63 on the UK singles chart, becoming the band's only charting song in the UK. The song is written in the key of D minor. The groundbreaking Jeopardy video became an MTV favorite on the New Music Channel. A parody of the song, titled I Lost on Jeopardy, was released by Weird Al Yankovic the following year in 1984. Ken appeared in a cameo in a music video for Yankovic's parody, driving a car into which Yankovic is thrown after being ejected from the Jeopardy game show, parodying the end of the Jeopardy video. Its license plate reads loser instead of lips. The bride still pops the cork of the champagne bottle and the video ends. Art Fleming and Don Pardo, host and announcer of the original version of Jeopardy, also make cameo appearances. The cover, I Fall to Pieces, is a song written by Hank Cochran and Harlan Howard that was originally recorded by Patsy Cline. Released as a single in 1961 via Decca Records, it topped the country charts, crossed over onto the pop charts, and became among Cline's biggest hits. I Fall to Pieces has since been considered a country music standard. It has received recognition from several major music associations, including the Recording Industry Association of America, Country Music Television, and Rolling Stone. The song has been covered by various artists of different musical styles, including as a duet by Aaron Neville and Trisha Yearwood in 1994.
Alan has a 1983 Specialty Records pressing, which has a small cutout on the cover. This has never been repressed since the 80s, so you are forced to track down an older copy. The dynamic range is fantastic. You should be able to easily get a used copy inexpensively. This album is fairly solid with nice tunes and great production with a nice use of rhythm and melody. There is some filler mixed in with the exceptional songs, but the entire album is a solid power pop release. I am sure it is no surprise that Alan loves the song Jeopardy. Everything about this song is absolutely perfect, with the fantastic guitar hook, that catchy dance floor beat, and the vocal delivery is spot on. However, there is more. The songs Fascination and Someday, check out the very nice extended guitar solo at the end. They're both wonderful. Alan encourages you to check these two out. He wasn't initially sure about the cover I Fall to Pieces, but has really grown on him. I have to admit, I was shocked that this was on the list initially, but after listening to it with Alan, I totally get it, and is a lost gem for sure. Alan scores a 7, and this is Greg Ken's only album on the list. By the way, Greg Ken is a great guy personally. He's not your typical rock star snob, and I think he is a cat lover too.
Love to Love You Baby is the second studio album by American singer Donna Summer, released in 1975, and is her first to be released internationally and in her home country of the United States. Her previous 1974 album, Lady of the Night, written by Giorgio Moroder and Pete Bellotta, which had given her a couple of hit singles, was released only in the Netherlands. By 1975, Summer had been living in Germany for 8 years and had participated in several musical theater shows, including Hair. She was still a complete unknown in her home country when she approached producers Moroder and Bellotta with an idea for a song. A reissued 45 of the song Je t'aime moi non plus by Jane Birkin and Serge Gainsbourg was back on the charts, prompting Summer to pen her own racy song. She had come up with the lyric Love to Love You Baby as the possible title for the song. Moroder was particularly interested in developing the new disco sound that was becoming increasingly popular, and used Summer's idea to develop the song into an overtly sexual disco track. He had the idea that she would moan and groan orgasmically, but Summer was initially reluctant. Eventually, she agreed to record the song only as a demo for other singers to hear and possibly record and release. The studio lights were dimmed so that Summer was more or less in complete darkness as she laid on the floor. She has stated she was not completely sure of some of the lyrics, and parts of the songs were improvised while recording. In an interview in 1976, Summer responded to a number of questions that she claimed she'd been asked about the process of recording the song. Were you alone in the studio? Yes, I was alone in the studio. Did you touch yourself? Yes, well, actually, I had my hand on my knee. Did you fantasize on anything? Yes, of my handsome boyfriend, Peter. Summer stated that she pictured herself as Marilyn Monroe acting out the part of someone in sexual ecstasy. Again, the entire time she was recording, she was thinking this would be a demo for someone else, thinking that the recording was too sexy for her personally. Moroder liked Summer's recording and insisted it should actually be released. Summer reluctantly agreed, and a song titled Love to Love You had become a moderate hit in the Netherlands. The song, however, still did not have a U.S. release after a European modest success. A tape of the song was sent to Casablanca Records president Neil Bogart in the U.S., who had bought the song from Moroder for an American release, and he played it at a party at his home. Impressed with the track, Bogart continued to play it over and over again all night. He later contacted Moroder and suggested that he make the track longer, possibly as long as 20 minutes, purportedly because he wanted a soundtrack for his sexual exploits. Summer, Moroder, Bellata returned with a 17-minute version, and according to Time magazine, it contained 22 simulated orgasms. By that point, the song was renamed Love to Love You Baby. It took up the entire first side of the album, and edited versions were also found on the 7-inch vinyl single. Originally released in November 1975, the song became an international disco smash. In the United States, it became Summer's first U.S. Top 40 hit, spending 2 weeks at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, being held off the number 1 spot by Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, and catapulted Summer's career to her amazement. The song also topped the Billboard Dance Club Songs chart for 4 weeks. In the UK, the song reached number 4 on the UK singles chart in spite of the BBC's initial refusal to promote and play it. It became one of the first disco hits to be released in extended form and was largely responsible for the development of the 12-inch single. The album itself was also released in late 1975 and was soon certified gold in the United States and made the top 20 in both the US and the UK. The song Love to Love You Baby was branded graphic by some music critics and was even banned by some radio stations for its explicit content. In some areas of the music press, Summer would later begin to be dubbed the First Lady of Love, which labeled her with a sexually oriented fantasy image from which she would later struggle to free herself of. A monumental event forced Summer to stop performing the song live. While performing the song in a tent in Italy, being fairly scantily clad with 5,000 men and almost no women present, the audience got so apparently aroused that they pushed the stage back. Summer then had to run off the stage to her trailer out the back, and then the men came to the trailer and started to rock it, and she thought she was going to perish in the process.
Oh yeah.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame named the song one of the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll in 1995. VH1 placed Love to Love You Baby at number 63 in their list of 100 greatest dance songs in 2000, and Slant magazine rated the song 10th in its 100 greatest dance songs in 2006. The other songs on the album had a more soul and R&B feel to them. Side 2 consisted of 4 more original songs, with 2 of the songs, Feel of Emptiness, which was taken from a previous album, Lady of the Night, and Whispering Waves being ballads.
Alan's copy is a 1975 Oasis Casablanca US pressing in decent condition. There are many different pressings from the middle 70s, with some of the European pressings having a slightly different side B track listing where she had her initial success. In the Netherlands, the album was released with the single Virgin Mary, replacing the first version of Full of Emptiness, and on some releases in Germany and France, a couple of songs were replaced by the hit singles from her first album. But other than that, Alan doesn't believe that there's any significant difference between the pressings. There was a 2015 remastered 40th anniversary edition that sparkles on the cover that you might be interested in if you want a brand new copy. This is clearly a legendary album driven by the risque nature of the title track and is rightfully a key song in the exploding disco movement. To Alan, the best songs are Love to Love You Baby and Need a Man Blues, the most up-tempo tracks. Even though Love to Love You Baby is almost 17 minutes long, its dynamic nature helps it not feel overly long due to the production of the legendary Giorgio Moroder. The ballads are okay, not bad, but don't hold up to the other tracks. Alan gives this a 7. So thank you for having me as your special guest on this episode. I need to sleep now. Hopefully Alan will leave me alone now. I need to save my energy in case a bird or a mouse come over. Maybe I will do this again sometime, but I need to get my agent to renegotiate my rate. Toodaloo.